Opening weekend estimates for Captain America Brave New World are in, and while they're being touted as big numbers, they are in fact abysmal and much worse than you're being led to believe, as we are about to demonstrate with some shocking examples. And chances are, the controversies surrounding the movie will only bring those numbers down even further. We're about to explore it all, so strap in. This video is sponsored by Surfshark. As of Tuesday, February 11th, Deadline Hollywood's headline read, "Captain America Brave New World will throw his mighty shield around the globe to 190 million opening, box office preview." That wording suggests they want you to be left with the impression that 190 million opening would be mighty, but no, it's just his shield. Such a worldwide opening for a movie like this would be anything but given the controversy surrounding it, including, but not limited to, that the activist contingent are actively rooting against the movie due to its Israeli representation, and that in China, they're even trying to hide the fact that Captain America is now a black man, both of which we are about to get into here. On top of that, the movie is also hamstrung by the fact that it is the direct sequel to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the Disney Plus series, which in the larger scheme of things, few saw and even fewer liked. In fact, that series was one of the major contributing reasons why audiences started fleeing from the streaming platform in the first place, beginning a decline that has only escalated since as more and more revert to the high seas. Though obviously neither we at Midnight's Edge nor any of our sponsors condone anyone taking to the high seas. I mean, it's wrong for one thing, and just think of all of the spyware, malware, and other assorted tracking software you'd run the additional risk of being subjected to, even beyond your normal browsing. There's a fix though. To protect yourself, you need to protect your data, and a good way of doing that is through a VPN, such as the one delivered by this channel's sponsor, Surfshark, which you can visit at surfshark.com/midnight. A VPN, or Virtual Private Network, is a privacy protection tool which encrypts your online data and secures your personal information, even when you're on a free public Wi-Fi, which is a goldmine for anyone wanting your data. Surfshark masks your IP address so that your location, download history, and other data isn't linked to your personal ID, while their Clean Web feature blocks trackers, malware, and phishing attempts, enabling you to surf safely. Best of all, unlike some other VPN providers out there, Surfshark does not monitor, track, or store what you do online. There's no activity log. In addition to providing online safety, Surfshark also liberates your internet by unblocking blocked websites and enabling you to bypass geo-blocking restrictions by changing the country you access the internet from, which gives some great advantages when it comes to streaming. For instance, you can access 15 different Netflix libraries, all with a different selection of movies and TV series simply by changing your virtual location. And there are many to choose from, as Surfshark has over 3,200 servers in more than 100 countries around the world. It gets even better though. If you use our link, surfshark.com/midnight, that triggers an exclusive special offer of 4 extra months for free. So, secure your privacy with Surfshark. Just head on over to surfshark.com/midnight to order. Link is in the description. Surfshark also offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk in trying it out at surfshark.com/midnight. Thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. And with that, let's return to Brave New World. And before we look into the Brave New controversies, let's explore the Brave box office projections. We will update with revised estimates and actual numbers as the weekend progresses, but before we learn what actually happened, let's set that up with what the industry thought was going to happen in the days prior to release. As of Tuesday, February 11th, Deadline Hollywood's headline read, "Captain America Brave New World will throw his mighty shield around the globe to 190 million opening, box office preview." And again, note how the word mighty in the headline is in reference to the shield, though of course they want you all to associate that with the box office estimates as well. The article proper reads, "It's the Valentine's Day 4-day weekend, and nothing says I love you more to moviegoers than Marvel Studios' Captain America Brave New World and Sony Studio Canal's Paddington in Peru. But it's also President's Day weekend, so consider Captain America to fit that bill." Okay, keep that in mind then, that 190 million global number being touted includes a domestic 4-day opening, not the usual 3. And if the cost of the movie had been modest, that would have been fine. But it wasn't, so it isn't. The article continues, "The 180 million budgeted Captain America Brave New World..." Okay, let's hold it right there, because that is intentionally deceptive. The movie may well have been budgeted at 180 million prior to it actually being filmed, but as we all know, the movie has been refilmed in its entirety at least once, and it has been subjected to multiple rounds of reshoots that were so extensive that a cheaper movie could have been filmed from beginning to end during the time spent on reshoots alone. And again, there were multiple rounds of such extensive reshoots. Only Marvel knows the true cost that went into making the movie, but it could easily be upwards of 300 million, and certainly much more than the 180 million that were initially budgeted. The real problem here, though, is that viewership has collapsed, and much worse than any industry trade is willing to admit. We have no such qualms, though, so let's have a look at that. Moving on with the article, which clarifies that the movie takes place after the events of the Disney Plus Marvel series The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, when Anthony Mackie's Sam Wilson picks up the shield left behind by Steve Rogers. Is bound to be a more grounded political thriller title a la 2014's Captain America Winter Soldier, which had a 3-day US opening of 95 million versus anything multiverse. Hence, expect a domestic opening of 80 million over 3 days, 94 million over 4 days, and a global start of 190 million in all territories, including China, day and date. The oranges to oranges comparison here then is that the Winter Soldier opened to 95 million domestically over 3 days in 2014, while Brave New World, as of Tuesday, was projected to open to 80 million domestically in those same 3 days. That's bad, because in 2014, the MCU was still in its growth phase, and still in the process of winning over audiences around the world. Yet even unadjusted for inflation, Brave New World is projected to open to 15 million less in the first 3 days. But it's actually worse than that, because adjusted for inflation, a 95 million opening in 2024 translates to 125-ish million opening weekend today. And even that doesn't account for price hikes. Adjust for those, and it becomes clear that more than a third of the domestic audience that saw The Winter Soldier in its first 3 days are projected to sit out Brave New World. And those were just the projections from before the negative reviews hit. But it's actually even worse still. That 3-day opening of 80 million that Brave New World is projected to have. If we were to inflation adjust that opening weekend estimate further back in time, back to 2008 to be specific, then 80 million today translates to 55 million back then. And 55 million is what The Incredible Hulk opened to back in 2008, and it underperformed. And that's still not adjusted for ticket price hikes, which means that if projections hold true, more audiences went to see The Incredible Hulk before they even realized the MCU was a thing than are expected to see Brave New World this weekend. Now that's a major franchise contraction right there. How could this have happened? Well, Deadline Hollywood kind of answers that by asking, what's the sell here? Red Hulk and Mackie's big screen debut as Captain America. In other words, a Hulk variant that Marvel is trying to tell themselves and everyone else that the audience likes, despite there being no evidence of that. Personally, I find the introduction of Red Hulk in the comics to mark the spot where the Hulk comics jumped the shark and became unreadable for years. and they never fully recovered, but I'm sure some out there must like Red Hulk, just not as many as Marvel seems to believe. As for Falcon Captain America, that was a flop when they tried it in the comics. The Disney Plus series Falcon and the Winter Soldier was also a flop, as we already touched on, so why they would possibly think that a big screen sequel to that Disney Plus series would be such a big draw is beyond me. Jumping forward a bit, the write-up continues. Eyes are on an international launch in the 110 million neighborhood. That number factors in about 20 million from China, but that market is perhaps more than ever the swing, and not because of the general softening towards studio fare the past several years. So in other words, excluding China, they're looking at a worldwide total of 180 million outside of China. And that's based on pre-review and pre-word-of-mouth projections. Just like the domestic, that's an appalling number, and it's still the best-case scenario. Let's see how the actual numbers turn out amid the controversies, and on that note, China is unlikely to swing in the movie's favor. How can I put this diplomatically? It is well known that Chinese distributors aren't too fond of selling American movies that happen to have black leads to Chinese audiences. Case in point, they minimized Finn on the Star Wars sequel trilogy posters. They hid Black Panther behind a mask in the posters for Black Panther, and for this movie, well, they would appear to have taken it to new heights as per that Park Place, which further disseminated pictures like these. Though to be fair, Mackie is visible in other posters, just with motion blur softening his appearance for Chinese sensibilities. And the matter of sensibilities, just of a different kind, is what has caused another controversy surrounding the movie. The movie features the Israeli hero Sabra, here portrayed by Shira Haas, about whom Forbes wrote, "The film stirred some controversy by including what seemed to be an Israeli superhero, when it was announced in September 2022 that Israeli actress Shira Haas would play Ruth Bath Seraf, also known by her alter ego Sabra. The character is a member of the Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency in the Marvel comics, but Marvel clarified in 2022 that the character would be reimagined for the film. After the trailer was released last summer, an updated description for the film described Haas' character as a US government official, not a member of the Mossad, and The Hollywood Reporter reported the film would not use her alter ego name Sabra, which some critics pointed out is the same name as a refugee camp in Lebanon, where Palestinians were massacred in 1982. But the decision to change Bat Seraf's backstory angered Israeli critics, and the Israeli news outlet Haaretz published a story claiming she was stripped of her Israeliness. Pro-Palestinian activists, meanwhile, have protested the character's inclusion. Organizations supporting the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement called for boycotts of the film, while dozens of protesters gathered at the film's Hollywood premiere Tuesday. While this is not in the Forbes article, I would like to add that there's also a faction that feels American politicians are a little bit too subservient to the wishes of Israel, so I'm sure it's going to go down well with this faction that Sabra is now one of the closest advisors of the US president and practically in charge of his security. In the movie's defense, though, it offends everyone equally, as the title of that Forbes piece is "Captain America becomes one of Marvel's worst reviewed films amid protests from both progressives and conservatives." That's another way of saying there is bipartisan agreement the movie is awful. And that, indeed, is the single biggest threat to the movie's box office prospects, namely the movie itself. As you can tell from our roundtable discussion of it, we did not much appreciate the movie, and we weren't the only ones, as reviews have been brutal, even from the media, which normally would run cover for Disney. Forbes writes, many critics considered the film one of Marvel's worst outputs. Rotten Tomatoes top critic A.A. Dowd wrote for Digital Trends that the film is a new rock bottom for the franchise with a mess of a plot, stating no blockbuster that cost this much money should look this shoddy. Vulture critic Bilge Ebiri slammed Marvel as becoming a giant slop machine, accusing the franchise of spinning out of control into the confused and shallow mess that we have before us. In a 1.5-star review, Washington Post critic Ty Burr called the film humorless and a pixel-pounding mishmash that is more interested in fan service and protecting corporate IP than in telling a coherent story. The Hollywood Reporter critic Frank Scheck blamed the film's writers for letting Mackie and his co-stars down with poor material. All the other controversies, the massive production cost, all of that could have been overcome if the movie had delivered and given the audience a movie they wanted. Alas, like almost everything else Marvel since Endgame, this is where the movie failed, and that is what's going to bring it down at the box office. How badly will it underperform relative to these projections? We'll know in a few days, and we'll keep you up to date as we find out, including what which level of underperformance means for Marvel and Disney going forward. For now, let me know if you plan on seeing Brave New World in the comments, and if you already did, what did you think about it? And before you go, remember to secure your privacy with Surfshark VPN. Use our link surfshark.com/midnight to get an exclusive special offer of 4 extra months for free. Surfshark also offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk in trying it out at surfshark.com/midnight. Link is in the description.